I approach the cybersecurity of Bitcoin from the perspective of a critical infrastructure professional. So that's what I'm looking at, is that Bitcoin is critical infrastructure, and we should approach defending it the same way that we defend power grids, pipelines, power plants, all of this sort of thing.
Do you focus in the book mostly on the overall Bitcoin network and defending that, or also on the individual level, what people can do to just like defend their own stack?
Yeah, so I build this in layers. First of all, I'm not assuming that anyone reading this book has a specific type of background. I've written it so that, say, the average Bitcoiner would be able to pick it up and understand what I'm talking about, which means I've had to go through and introduce a lot of the cybersecurity vocabulary that I'm talking about here. Plus, I've also made it accessible to people who understand the cybersecurity world. So the people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn and that I work with day to day, those people I also want to reach here. This is my attempt at doing a little bit of orange pill outreach. So I also have some introduction to Bitcoin and what it's all about on a technical level, on a monetary level, and then I bring it all together for everyone and say, okay, here's where it all works together, and Bitcoin is critical infrastructure, and here's what critical infrastructure cybersecurity would look like in the Bitcoin space. Then I take it to the level of your individual Bitcoin. So there's 3 chapters that are focused on basically protecting your own personal Bitcoin and yourself. One is the risks of leaving your keys on an exchange, and that's basically that might be old hat to a lot of people in the Bitcoin space, but I would say the vast majority of Bitcoin is still held on exchanges, especially by retail people who have no other idea. So get your keys off the exchange is basically the message of one chapter. Then the next is about how to secure your private keys when you do take self-custody. And so this is, I mean, that chapter alone could have been 500 pages. There's a lot of ways to do that and ins and outs, but I cover what I consider to be the most important things to know about. And there's further resources, by the way, on defendingbitcoin.com to take you to more practical places and maybe look at some good hardware wallets and things like this. And then finally in this first sort of personal layer, the privacy aspect. This is really important. The understanding why privacy is important to your Bitcoin security and to your personal security. That's something that maybe some Bitcoiners haven't thought about, and people not familiar with the space wouldn't know about either. Hat tip here to Max Hillebrand with his Praxeology of Privacy book, which just released the physical version here. I borrowed a lot from that for this privacy chapter, and he's fantastic. He goes into great detail about why privacy is important and really merges the ideas of a praxeology of Austrian economics with the cypherpunk ideals. And so that's a fantastic book. That's also going to be available at BTC Prague and pretty much everywhere you get books. So yeah, really recommend checking out that book. And you should talk to him, by the way, Robin, about his book if you haven't already. So
I had Max already on the podcast, but he was one of the first guests. So I think I had him not on for like 3 years. I should reach out back to Max. I've seen him here and there on conferences. I think what people are afraid of, because those stories are spread very rapidly, and it happens also to not just like an average pleb that doesn't care about Bitcoin, but it also happens to Bitcoiners who are in the industry and even working in the industry. How high is the risk of getting a Bitcoin stolen really? Like how exposed do you think is like the average Bitcoiner to getting their Bitcoin stolen? Because we keep on hearing those stories.
Well, quantifying that is a little bit difficult, and for that, to answer your question, I'll go over a little bit about what I mean by risk. I think you said what's the risk. So risk formally is defined as likelihood times impact. In other words, how likely is it for something to happen versus what are the consequences of that thing happening. So something with a high likelihood but a low impact, okay, you might want to make it a little less likely for that thing to happen, but it's not bothering you anyway. Stubbing your toe or something like this, versus something that is really high impact but isn't likely to occur very often. That's something where you might want to do some analysis on what you can do to make it so that it's, say, impossible or functionally impossible. And losing your Bitcoin keys would count as really high impact, but pretty low likelihood. So the thing is, when we're talking about what is the impact of losing your Bitcoin keys, well, you lose your Bitcoin, and that's years of your life going away. Not good. So what we do is we reduce the likelihood of something actually happening to make it so that you lose your Bitcoin keys. And I would say that the average Bitcoiner, okay, if you've just got your keys sitting on an exchange, right, you're giving all of your security to them. You're relying on that exchange um, to keep your Bitcoin secure, and you're also relying on them to give you your Bitcoin when you request it, or not freeze your account for the case of like say a government decides that, hey, you're doing something fishy, like let's look into that. There's definitely a lot of risk if you're holding your Bitcoin on an exchange, and certainly I recommend to get your Bitcoin off. But then the thing is, if you're taking your own self custody, you have to be aware that the responsibility is all yours from now on. There's no customer support to call. There's no central authority who can get your Bitcoin back if you lose it. So yeah, I would say that it's not like it could happen that any Bitcoiner is going to immediately lose their Bitcoin. But the thing is, you have to be safe, right? This is where the privacy angle comes in. That if someone knows that you have Bitcoin, that increases the likelihood that they're going to come after you, right? And the thing there is that this can go in a couple of directions. One could be that someone tries to hack you. There are plenty of instances where Bitcoiners have been targeted, whether personally, and I mean that's scary if someone is being like personally targeted for an attack. Rick Messett, if you know him with the Bitcoin Way, talks frequently about that he was hacked, and it was a very targeted measure and all this. But for example, there have been these Telegram scams going around where if they get you to click a link in a Zoom call, you're done. Your Telegram account is picked up. I know they're North Korean, by the way, because when they tried to get me as a little way of testing what would happen or having some fun, I asked Grok to make some nice insults of their dear leader in Korean that I could paste into the chat, and the block was basically instant. And what was funny is that they came back another time with another account, someone else who had gotten compromised, and they got to me and said, hey, how's it going? And they didn't even give me a chance to reply. I replied, hi, going well, how's it going? And they blocked me immediately, and insulted me and all this. So this stuff is going around North Korea like a nation state. They actually make quite a lot of money off of stealing people's Bitcoin and crypto. They don't care. It's money to them eventually at the end of the day. So, but the point is, there's stuff going around that can be targeting you personally. It can be floating around on the internet around these Bitcoin communities. There's plenty of ways that this stuff can happen. So I mean, quantifying the risk is hard, but it's definitely some kind of level of, there's a moderate risk. It's not like this is something that is definitely going to happen. You're not going to lose your Bitcoin just by sending it to your hardware wallet, but you do need to know what are the risks of holding your own Bitcoin, and how to take responsibility for that, and how to keep your Bitcoin safe. And that's what Defending Bitcoin, what I try to do, is lay out the steps that you should take in order to keep your Bitcoin as safe as possible. You don't have to implement everything, but you can do quite a lot if you choose to. So that's the point. And spreading the message of how to be secure in Bitcoin is what I'm hoping to do with this book.
There's a tricky question, because I think about that actually a lot. I think self-custody is amazing. I have MicroSeed, like I promote self-custody actively. But I also see how people are taking sometimes self-custody and not doing enough research. And some of them, I see them like, it would be almost better you're not taking self-custody because you're doing it so poorly. And it's a really hard conversation, because on the one hand, I want everyone to take self-custody, but it's not like you can mess things up, as you said, like your own security team, you're reviewing, and so it's not that easy. And so I thought about that. I was like, okay, what is the alternative to that? You're either doing it on normal bank buying the Bitcoin, or you're doing it on exchange, which is horrible. Probably even more unsecure. And so, like, is my assumption correct that being on an exchange, being on a bank account, like almost like comparing it to like a stock broker where you have like maybe a two-factor authentication and log in, is that almost always less secure than self-custody if you're not doing very big mistakes with self-custody?
Well, that's a good question and a funny question, because the answer really isn't intuitive. And the thing here is that no, an exchange is actually probably more secure than taking self custody, or at least it's the choice that for the vast majority of people, especially if you're not technical, is going to be the easier choice for a long time. The problem is there's still loads of risk there. It's counterparty risk is the technical term, right? So what happens if your exchange goes bankrupt or gets hacked, right? You don't know this. There are plenty of reputable exchanges, but FTX, I mean, there were a couple of people shouting the alarm, but hindsight is 2020, right? Tons of people were on FTX before it collapsed. Celsius, BlockFi, the Quadriga CX case from back in 2018, I believe, that was the largest Bitcoin exchange in Canada, right? And the guy just died, allegedly. He just died, and that's how all the funds became inaccessible, right? So you don't know when this is going to happen. And now, okay, the case where an exchange founder is the only person who knows where the private keys are, that's not secure, right? But these large institutions that have major security programs and invest quite a lot into keeping their funds safe and secure, and they make tons of money. Therefore, if they have some small loss or something like this, they can make people whole. I think it was even Bitfinex had a hack and everything, and I mean they're still operating, right? So yeah, the thing is, I think for say the average person who are just trying to adopt into the Bitcoin space, okay, yes, for them personally, trusting an exchange might be okay. But the problem with it is when you get into that people want to pay for things with their Bitcoin, and how do you do that? It's not really all that easy to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange from an exchange account, right? And then the thing is, you're always at the whim of the jurisdiction that the exchange is based in, or perhaps there's some international law enforcement or something like this that says, hey, you've not declared your Bitcoin, and we need you to pay taxes and all this, right? So holding your Bitcoin on an exchange is a trade-off. Everything is a trade-off in security. And if you were to take your Bitcoin off of the exchange, you get rid of all the risks that could happen by leaving your Bitcoin on the exchange. You just transfer all of the responsibility to yourself. And there, well, okay, to the second part of the question is it more secure, less secure? Well, okay, you can take absolutely great self custody provisions and make that extremely secure and extremely robust, so that it's quite reliable. There are just a lot of steps that go into this process, and taking your funds into a hardware wallet, first of all, is pretty much the number one thing to recommend here. But then you need to have backups. You need to have planning in case something happens to you. So it's complicated. It's not like you should just send your keys to an address that you control without having a plan. That's not going to work, and you are at risk of losing your Bitcoin if you do lose access to your keys, or someone tricks you into entering your 12 or 24 words into some website, something like this. So there's just a lot to be aware of. But I encourage everyone in Bitcoin holders, to learn about this stuff and take baby steps. Like maybe you want to use a hardware wallet that's nice and accessible. Bitbox is a good example, I think, where the interface is very good. It's quite easy to use, and maybe you're not at the point of rolling your own seed sign or a cold card or something like this, but those might be later on where you start to dig into the all of the cool features that are on offer for Bitcoin self custody solutions. So baby steps, take it one step at a time, and move towards self custody and more robust self custody over time. It's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight.
I love that message, because people also ask me like, hey, should I take self-custody? I'm like, yeah, but if you've never done that, especially if you have no knowledge on that, take it very slow. You don't have to transfer all of it today. You can take a small portion of it. Let's say you have 10K in Bitcoin. Take, I don't know, $300 out of that and put it in self-custody. Because if you lose the $300 out of the 10K, you're not going to cry. If you lose the 10K, you might cry. And so take slow steps and test it out, get confidence. And there's also, I think that might be one more worth level of explaining or like going deeper on, because there's different levels of security and there are different services out there. And it's quite confusing because everything is called just self-custody. But there's self-custody where you do everything yourself. You run your own node, you do literally everything yourself, and you don't rely on any third party. Then there's those services that help you with that. We mentioned already the Bitcoin way. There are other services that do similar things. Then there is collaborative custody, like I think Casa and Unchained are probably the two most well-known in that space, that do something where they hold, I think it's one key and you hold 2 or 4 or something like that. So they have some kind of like collaboratives where they have the node where they run most of the things, but you hold most of the keys. And so there is like, and of course there's exchanges and like brokers and banks and all of those things. So there's like different levels of that. And it's on the one hand very good. There are so many things out there, but it can also be confusing, because if you come into the space, everyone says like take self-custody, and then it's like, oh yeah, there's like 50 different things I could take self-custody, and they all look very different. They're like, Casa looks so different from the Bitcoin way, looks so different than from like me running my own node and doing everything by myself and watching, I don't know, Ben from BTC session the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the thing here is, in defending Bitcoin, I put together a framework that I hope simplifies this for most people, and it's based off of the main international standard for critical infrastructure cybersecurity, and it's got the greatest name ever, ISA IEC 62443, super memorable. Yeah, but the thing there is, I've taken the key elements, which is first of all categorizing the types of controls you can do into 7 categories. I won't rattle them off, but yeah, it categorizes them so you can make more sense. But then it also divides them into security levels. So there's 4 security levels under this 62443. I've simplified that into 3. So the first level is start here, and here are the things that you should do right away in various contexts. Like, for example, it's a different task to start to set up your own full node, and you should definitely do that. That's different from setting up your hardware wallet and taking funds into self-custody. Those are both things that you should start here, but they're different. They're fulfilling different goals, so to say. So you pick from the start here list is what I kind of recommend there. Then go further. These are things like deepening what you can do with Bitcoin. So, for example, you could add multi-sig or a passphrase. That would be something that would fall under, say, go further. Something that makes your security posture a little bit more robust and usually isn't that much more expensive to do. Then if you want to go further than that, these are kind of advanced things, ways to make yourself even more bulletproof or untouchable. This would be things like, for example, keeping your different keys in a multi-sig on different countries or continents, something like that, like really geographically distributing it so that your funds aren't accessible unless you get on a plane, for example. So these are things that not everyone has to do, but definitely they're things that you can consider. And so I've mapped it out this way. Every chapter includes threats, specific threats, and then the controls is the technical term for things that aim to reduce a risk. Right, and a threat is an actor or a vector for someone to exploit a risk, basically, and a control reduces that risk. So the thing here is that all of the controls are listed, they're categorized, and at the end of each chapter, it sums up with a list of action items broken down by start here, go further, and advanced controls. There's also a summary in the conclusion with kind of the top level items, a little bit simplified. So plus all of this is available on defendingbitcoin.com even right now. I don't know when you're planning to release this, but even if this is before the book is out, which is in 2 weeks from today, actually, there's a threat model worksheet on defendingbitcoin.com where you can put in some details about your setup, click the send button, and it goes straight to our inbox, and we get all your data. Just kidding. No, it's verifiably 100% local. We don't collect any data from this. It's all in the URL. You can verify, but it's just a tool to help you to understand what threats might be applicable to you, and then shows the controls that would apply to that. And of course, all the details are in the book, but I'm planning to make quite a lot of information available on defendingbitcoin.com.
I love that. Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.